Welcome everybody once more to the second episode of the Higanbana Bookclub Podcast. For this episode we're going to be talking about Chapter 4, 5, 6 and 7 of The First Night. I'm your host Aspirety, and joining me this week we have MagusVerborum.
Hi, I'm Magus. I'm coming back for a second time, so I must have done something right.
Yep. Pictoshark?
What? I thought it was a tea party. Am I not going to get any muffins?
Wait, what was Mario's power again?
Tree trunks.
She could find buns. She could...
And creating tea cakes,
yeah. Home in on buns.
Yeah, Mario can get some tea cakes for you, I'm sure. And we also have VyseGolbez.
I'm taking a break from Higurashi this time and here for Higanbana stuff.
Wait, what do you mean taking a break from Higurashi?
He's taking a break as much as Manga Gamer are.
Basically.
Right, okay. Fair enough. And here we are with The First Night, Chapter 4. Shrine of the Guardian Deity. Let's jump right in, guys. I guess, this is a very short chapter. I think it clocked around 20 minutes, 30 minutes for me.
It was surprisingly short.
Yeah.
I could tell it was going to happen, but I was surprised it wasn't shorter. It's a bit longer.
It's kind of
like someone didn't get hurt first.
Yeah, I think this is kind of something you tapped into, Picto, is that this is the ghost story that never happened. It's kind of when shit's about to hit the fan, basically Marie just jumps in and stops the tragedy from happening, and we get a sudden happy ending. It's kind of like when you're in a video game and you're like, you know those video games where you can just completely avoid the entire confrontation by walking left at the start of the game? It's kind of like that.
What in the name of God video games do you play?
Far Cry 4. Far Cry 4 is very famous for that.
Far Cry 4.
I think you're talking about the third season of New Doctor Who.
So, but yeah, basically, we kind of avoided the whole problem here, which is interesting way of telling a story.
It's just reminding us that Marie is competent, because the story is about to throw many pieces of evidence at us that she is not later on, so they needed this chapter in.
Yeah, I mean, after her complete defeat at the end of Chapter 3, all of her efforts being, bringing naught but, nothing really, no change at all to Midori's circumstance, I think it was really nice to see her actually do something that really mattered. And not at the urging of Higanbana either. I can't even theorize that Higanbana was responsible for this or anything like that. This is a genuine moment where Marie achieved something, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it is.
There's a scene where, goodness, what are their names? My goodness, the children are running through the old school building looking for ways to apologize.
Mitsuru was the name of the Twin Tails girl.
Yeah, Mitsuru. That's right. She calls out for spirits to protect her, which not Sakaturo is one of those types of spirits, I believe.
Sakunoshin.
Look, if it sounds like a Sakaturo and says Uryu all the time, I'm just saying. Sakaturo.
It's not Sakataro. But yeah, Sakunoshin is an interesting character. I think Sakunoshin is interesting. It's definitely a subversion of our expectations when we expect the great vengeful spirit is actually just a cowardly lion. Or is he a lion? The character bio says he looks like a fox but acts like a lion. And that makes me think that maybe this is a reference to Kitsune law. It kind of explains his human-like appearance there. He's the leader of the yokai of the... Because, Magus, you talk about this.
Are they yokai, though? This is a question that I'm having, because in his biography that opens up when you finish the night, or the entire night, it says that he's a school yokai, though some of that is under suspicion. My question is it the school part or the yokai part that's under suspicion? Is he a yokai? What makes a yokai different from a guardian spirit? How do you become one or the other? What is the difference between the two? Because Sakanoshin, from what we see of him, doesn't have a lot of power. And I think that might be the difference between the two.
Bosses, while guardian spirits are usually stage 3 or 4.
That's not helpful, Picto. Oh my god. But yokai use really obvious massive displays of power. They at least say they're malicious, though I've had some theories that kind of question that. But I think as we go through this story, we'll see that there is confirmation that some yokai are just assholes. But Sekuno Shin seems to be a benevolent, kind of
He's a guardian spirit.
watcher. Yeah,
Here's
exactly.
a real question.
He lives up to his name, though
Could
he's not
Sekuno
as powerful.
Shin
Hmm?
have massively changed the plot of the next chapter that we're about to talk about? If he's like
Oh,
the
God.
king of the animals or whatever.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't come up at all, to be perfectly honest. I was
Oh
like,
dear.
It'd have been like, rabbits, run away, Uryu.
Yeah, definitely. Command the beasts.
I was really expecting him to pop up at least once, but it kind of feels like these chapters are very self-contained. Well, except for a girl's day, one girl's day. But like these chapter 4 and 5 definitely feel very self-contained in the narrative.
I find it hilarious that One Girl's Day was not in the manga.
Yeah, that is kind of weird, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
for those listening in, chapter 4, 5, and 6 were not included in any of the adaptations except for the visual novel, so it's like visual novel exclusive material. But yeah, it's kind of like, it almost feels like maybe Ryukishi was trying to give that character a bit more of closure. We're getting way too ahead. We're jumping all around the place. But I
fun.
really
I'm
don't
enjoying it.
have a lot to
Orders
say
for
about.
nerds.
I don't have a lot to say about Shry the Guardian Deity. It's just a thing.
If Uminaka episode 4 has taught me anything, it's that chronological order is for chumps.
All right, let's go back to chapter 4 for a second.
Yeah, let's go through the questions.
What's a nurse? What's her deal? Like, we keep bringing this up.
Oh my god.
Man,
She's such a weird character because she has a sprite and she has a name, which is just Nurse. And she's said to be like watched over by Higanbana. She has an affinity to like sense spirits. She hears them. She hears their presence as like insects chirping and making noise. Like, I feel like she's going to be important. I theorized in my post on the forum that she might be a bookkeeper or an observer that like catalogs the yokai. And that she's using like her position as Nurse to kind of
Higanbana doll is
to cover
supposed to
that.
look like a deceased child. New theory.
Yeah, like I can't imagine she has no role in the story. I just hope it's not. Oh no, I'm being attacked by yokai.
It's
I
going to be
need
really
someone to
embarrassing
save
in
me.
hindsight if she has no role in the story.
Well, that's my theory. I think she's going to have no significance whatsoever.
She must. Everything means something. This is a seventh expansion
She
work.
is bait
It's gotta
by
be.
Ryukishi to get people on the forums to speculate what's the deal with her.
Moving on from that, do you reckon Michiru could see the spirits and the yokai?
Here's the thing:
Well-
if they
does
exist, yes.
Does she have a sixth sense? Because we know that the
I think she
yokai can
does.
present themselves before humans if they want to.
Yeah, Maria
Hmm.
could have just been appearing before her, or having a voice be presented to her to make her feel better.
Yeah.
Doesn't
But-
matter. I think she does. I think that she could see them. She makes a comment that she can only really see them if she wants to see them.
Like,
I think that
you
she
remember
can
the whole
detect like the
conflict was
nurse.
kicked off by her feeling.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't describe it as feeling like anger. She describes it as feeling incredibly like negative emotions from the shrine. She
Yeah.
wasn't too specific, which if she didn't have any abilities, you'd think that she would have been more specific and therefore wrong.
It does make you think about this trope in like fiction where there's characters that have a sixth sense, and usually this is portrayed as like a position of authority on the world of the spirits. But what if you're just like, you have a sense for it but you don't fully understand it? I think that might be what this is going for. It's just like, it gives us the impression that Michiru is an authority in the spirit world, and really she's just kind of feeling her way around. She might have a
Yeah.
vague idea of things, but then things might totally betray her expectations, and then she questions herself. It's like, oh god, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But then I guess
Yeah,
that's Marie's there to counsel her. It's like, no, you do have a sense. It's just you're still getting a hang of it. You're still figuring it
It's
out.
very interesting that she says that she claims that she has a sixth sense, and we as the audience are immediately supposed to think, oh well, she clearly has a sixth sense. Like, that puts her in a position of power and authority.
Yeah.
But up until the events of this chapter, she doesn't seem like that way at all. She seems like the kind of character who will be the target of bullying, perhaps, or prejudice in that regard. It reminds me of other 7th expansion characters who use their
Seventh
knowledge of
expansion.
something that 7th expansion characters. One of the characters that uses their knowledge as something that nobody else can understand in order to elevate themselves above others. We see that at least with Maria Inumineko, just as an example, using knowledge of something that nobody can confirm. Nobody else has this sixth sense except for the nurse, but the nurse doesn't even know what the sense is. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting that that's a recurring theme.
Let's move on to the next chapter. Vice, tell me about Hameln's Castanet.
So, as a guy from Germany, the story of the Pied Piper of Hameln is really familiar to me because that's really famous in Germany.
Yeah, I know about the story, but I guess we don't usually... I didn't remember his name at any rate. So I didn't make the immediate connection, but yeah.
I actually noticed something very odd, so I want Vice to talk about what he knows about the story, because I didn't do any follow-up research, so chat away about the story, Vice, and I'll see if what I noticed was odd is me being odd, or the work being odd.
So, the story of the Pied Piper is basically that the village of Hameln had a problem with rats. They didn't really know if they didn't really manage to get them out, and then a person in pied clothing arrives in the city and promises that he'd be able to get rid of the rats, and he does get promised a reward for that. So, and he does get rid of the rats by playing a pipe. The rats basically followed him outside the village. But once he came back the next day, the mayor refused to pay the reward, so as a revenge, the Pied Piper then, at the next night, abducted all children from the village by playing his pipe.
Yeah, it's the same thing I noticed too. They mention that they allude to in the Pied Piper of Hameln's story in this, he turned them into rats and made them go away. That's almost something that was added. In all the versions of the story I've heard, his pipe just made the children walk the fuck out of the village in a stupor.
Did he return them? Did he return the kids?
Not in the version I heard.
Because I don't recall.
In the version I heard, he was never seen again, so...
Right. That's fucked up.
I know. Well, it's a great demonstration of how if someone with magical powers helps you and asks for money, and you agree to give them money, give them money. What is wrong with you?
Goddamn money, yeah.
That mayor's a fucking idiot.
At any rate, if you check Hameln's character profile, it actually says, while he liked the pipe, he couldn't monologue while blowing one, so he changed instruments, which is the funniest explanation to me. Which pretty much perfectly describes his character.
Yeah.
He's very haughty, very self-important.
Yeah. He's very much an egotist in the story. That's kind of his thing. Oh my goodness.
Hameln's Castanets. That's how I imagined him saying it, by the way.
So yeah, this chapter is very gruesome. It's kind of like, I guess, the real bad end chapter for one of our characters, where there's no redemption arc. It's just Hikaru is pretty much a sociopath, and he gets his just desserts for it. And that's, yeah, it's kind of like, because not all ghost stories are meant to have a happy ending. Many don't, and this is definitely making that clear here.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was pretty cool that he ended it, once again, Ryukishi having a chapter that ends on a sour note. With
I guess
really
chapter 3 did
happening.
as well, but yeah.
No, I mean, that's what I mean. Chapter 3, and now chapter 5, and then continuing on, maybe we'll see more of that. I like that Ryukishi is having bad endings. I think that's really cool. And the extremes that he goes to in his chapters, I mean, it's pretty messed up. Little bunnies who are really friendly with the protagonist. Yeah, I don't even want to describe what happens in the end of this chapter, because I couldn't believe it myself. It's not appropriate. Well, I think that in chapter 5, we really see how Ryukishi can write a character who is young and at first seemingly innocent, but very quickly we learn that they're a bad person. I thought it was pretty cool that Ryukishi once again shows how you can write a character who we're supposed to empathize with, and a character who, like, normally there's a saying that, like, kids are innocent, and normally in stories they're, you know, kept away from the main action or, you know, threatened because they're, oh no, a kid's gonna die. But in this story, we see the kid being the villain. Even if Hamel is helping him, he still kills, is it 4 people? And, like, dumps their bodies and slaughters rabbits. Like, it's really messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really cool that Ryukishi is saying that anyone can be, you know, an evil person.
And this is something that comes up a lot in Ryukishi's works. Hello, Higurashi.
Definitely.
I mean, Hikaru is just a complete shit. It's great. He's very entertaining to follow the thought train of, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's no Kanamori.
I mean, like...
I'm like, what depraved depths will he sink to next?
Yeah.
Ah, he was just a twat in front of the whole class. Ah, that explains something.
I kind of feel like he's worse than Kanamori in some respects.
I think he's worse.
You think he is worse than the child rapist?
Well, yeah. He fucking...
At least Kanamori was willing to go through with what he did. Like, as soon as he was presented... As soon as Hikaru presented with you're killing people, he just collapsed under his own weight.
Kanamori is aware of his own failings as a person. He knows he's trash.
Yeah.
Hikaru doesn't. He thinks
he's
is
totally
a god.
Self-absorbed. With a fantasy of being a murderer and having power over people.
I believe Hikaru's actions in this chapter were more gruesome than anything Kanamori did. At least from a physiological perspective. I don't know, maybe like psychological abuse is another sort of can of worms, but...
Well, would he have killed without the ability to, like, do it and get away with it?
No, and that's kind of an interesting point, I guess you could say. Yeah, because Kanamori definitely... Well, he was an adult, right? He had the means to do everything he could. But Hikaru kind of just goes with the flow. He was given an opportunity to get his revenge and he took full advantage of it. But he was still abusing bunnies before then. I don't know.
Like, I seriously would want to know how Hikaru almost won. Hikaru and Hamlin almost won by a hair's breadth.
Yeah.
If Hamlin would have gone for such a patently stupid way of killing Higanbana.
That was so good, though.
And Hikaru would have been sociopathically smart enough to go, wait, that's stupid, and stepped on her.
It's so good, though, because it's like how Mesa-san fought Higanbana back in Chapter 2 with, like, the closing of the door. It's really interesting to see how the ghost stories kind of work, because each yokai is kind of powered by their own ghost story. So if their ghost story is true in the moment, they have more power. It wasn't enough at the end, but Hamelin changing the name of the room to the music room technically put him within his own ghost story and gave him power to turn Higanbana into a little bunny. Unfortunately, Higanbana is just that strong. And she just ripped his guts out, which is fantastic, by the way. I love that scene. All the dark humor.
And then Hammond does a live concert and just turns, like, 3,000 people into rabbits.
Live concert.
Live Hamlin's Castanets concert.
But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's his plan, isn't it? Oh, go
Also,
Vice.
Hamlin's plan is stupid.
Yeah, it is.
It is, but that's the point. Vice, what do you
No,
have to say?
I will spread the story of my ghost story, which leaves no survivors.
Yeah, that is kind of an oversight.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of an idiot. He's a very far-reaching idiot, and that's why he gets ruined at the end. I think that's kind of the point.
Vice, you were going to say something?
Yeah, you've been all saying that Hikaru is basically a sociopath, but that's kind of where I'm questioning, because one thing is certain, children have a greater potential for cruelty, or for being cruel basically, but that's simply because they haven't grasped a sense of morality yet. So, depending on how we view Hikaru as to having gained that sense of morality, how far he is in that process, changes the perspective if he's really a sociopath or if he's just someone that hasn't gotten his own sense of morality.
Yeah, and that's a good... I'm glad you brought that up, because it's very easy to label him as, say, a sociopath, but we do have these scenes where, like, Higanbana takes the rabbits he murdered and transforms them back into their human forms. And he's like, okay, kill them now. And he's like, oh god, this is horrible. You know, he definitely isn't okay with that. And I think that's sort of an idea there, how he doesn't have a good sense of what it means to kill and what the value of human life is. And when he's confronted with that, it's kind of like, oh god, this is what I've been dissociating myself from. This is the reality of what I'm doing. And it's only because they were rabbits and tiny things that are weaker than him that he was able to commit that cruelty. And like, Higanbana talks about this a lot, where the value of killing is like very much a human idea. And, you know, people step on bugs all the time and kill them, and that's somehow fine. It's just like, it's kind of how, as humans, we have to dissociate ourselves from certain acts of killing because they are too far removed from our experience of being able to rationalize. Like, if we cried over every bug we accidentally stepped on, then we would be very emotionally unstable, I guess you could say. We wouldn't be able to function in society. But Higanbana draws a question to this sort of strange reality of killing, and how just by simply turning the bullies into bunnies, Hikaru is able to justify his murder. It's very interesting.
I just want to ask a quick question about Hikaru. Do you guys feel like he was redeemable? Do you think there was a chance that he could have avoided his fate? No? Not at all?
He was pretty bad.
Would you like to elaborate at all? He was pretty bad. But
I think he could have.
I don't know.
I think without Hamlet showing up, he could have just moved on with his life. But he probably would have abused animals for most of his days.
Yeah.
Because that sort of behaviour very much sets in, as far as I know.
Sure. Yeah, because a lot of Ryukishi's work is about how people can be redeemed. And I feel like that's
definitely also
something that he's kind of denying with Hikaru, right?
And interestingly, this is a chapter where Marie had no involvement. She saw Hikaru at the very beginning, and then Hikaru pretty much abused her.
Yeah.
And she just ran away, and then I really wonder what happened then. There must have been a conversation Marie had with Higanbana after that happened. And like...
Oh, with Higanbana? And she was like, yo, Higanbana, I can't deal with this.
Exactly.
You need to sort her out.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Like, it's like, don't worry, Marie, I'll take care of this. It's sort of what I'm thinking. And like, Marie's just like, I don't know, you're gonna do something bad, aren't you, Higanbana? And she's like...
It's like, no, of course not. Why would I...
Just like... like, it's not your problem anymore. Let me deal with it. I'm just trying to think of all the interactions that would have happened behind the scenes there. Because I'm certain, like, Higanbana just didn't get involved for no reason. I'm sure, like, Marie would have been the one to tell her.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, Higanbana's doing this, like, transforming Hikaru into a bunny to, like, protect Marie. I'm sure of it. Especially given the interaction that they have during the next chapter, during One Girl's Day. It's a super short chapter. We got to see Yoko, who is that lovely, adorable girl from chapter 2, who got sent to hell. And we kind of go through her day, where she gets to, like, relive being a human, and then she becomes a corpse and then a spirit in the infirmary room. And then Higanbana has this moment at the end where she's like, gotcha, now I can eat you. And Maria says, I mean, you could just eat some tea cakes with me. And Higanbana says, well, this spirit wasn't to my taste anyway, and spits Yoko back out and lets her ascend. And I feel like we're being shown a concrete example of how Higanbana and Marie are learning about each other through these stories that they're kind of experiencing. They're kind of a part of it, but they're also kind of learning from it. The lesson that we kind of learn from Yoko's story is that people can find happiness at the end. And with like Takeshi and Yoko, we learned that, like, they can go against their nature to, like, kill each other in order to survive. I think that we're really seeing growth from Higanbana, and she's kind of understanding that she doesn't always have to be this, like, animalistic yokai that we're told that the yokai are. We're being shown that just because you're a yokai, that is an excuse for bullying or general bad behavior.
Because I really feel like Higanbana sort of ideologically represents a character who cannot forgive injustice. Like, she...
Yeah, definitely.
her justice is absolute. If someone does the wrong thing, then they must be punished no matter what. And I question whether she actually believes in redemption at all. I think it's just a matter of like, I'm going to eat you if you do the wrong thing. And then that message gets passed down and people fear doing the wrong thing. I think it's kind of her modus, her MO.
Yeah.
But then Marie is introduced and kind of changes her thinking a little bit there. That maybe people can be redeemed.
It was a cute chapter.
Super chill. I love the slice of life antics.
You know, I think this is like a memory that she's reliving of the day when everything went wrong. And so she's kind of come into this with her experiences of like wanting to make the most of her limited time back on Earth. She puts a positive spin on everything, and Higanbana decides to test that because she's a bitch. But yeah, just that way that she's able to put a smile on for everything, and it feels like she's very much embellishing her school life, because we don't really know what she was like back then. She could have been a very different person.
We know that she was like very she was quite popular before chapter 2 could decide to ruin her fucking life.
Takashi.
Yeah, Takashi did it. Yeah, I almost wonder if in the one true timeline, Yoko's like, when she was in hell, she was just experiencing that one day where everything went wrong. Like, I wonder if rather than Higanbana doing all those things, in reality, all those things went wrong, and then that's what kind of drove her to her eventual suicide. And so this chapter is kind of her remembering, oh, these are all those things that went wrong, but it's okay. I can, like, things can go badly, and I can still pick myself up after it. I think that's kind of what's going on there.
Okay, Magus, reconstruct the crime scene.
Alright, someone get Dancing Pipe playing in the background. So, Chapter 5, Utopia.
7.
Chapter 7.
Chapter 7, Utopia.
If Chapter 5 was Utopia, then like the bunny race was the
Chapter 5, 7, same difference. Okay, so, oh my goodness. So, we have our main characters. We have Yukari, we have Higanbana trying to drive her to suicide. We're shown a nice little kind of vignette, kind of small ghost story at the very beginning. There's a nameless student who thinks they're better than everyone else and then jumps off the building. And Higanbana's like, hey, Mari, I'm going to make someone else do that. And Mari's like, no, I'm going to make sure no one does that. And so they begin their opposing hunts.
The chapter goes through a lot of story arcs, and I kind of like that.
I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the first half of the story in particular. Essentially, we go through a long period of time where Yukari is being bullied and driven to suicidal thoughts, and Mari is trying to help her. She uses her Mesa-San powers to stop one of the bullies, Osaki-kun, from bullying her, but she finds out that doesn't really help too much because there are other bullies. Ryukishi mentions that there could be a systemic problem that is causing more bullies to be created, but then quickly moves on from that issue in favor of Disney villains and murder solving everything.
He doesn't move on from it though.
He does. He's literally, maybe there's a problem here. Oh wait, it was caused by a yokai.
It wasn't caused by a yokai. These things, the bullies happen naturally.
They do. I made that whole class bullies.
Yeah. She creates 100 bullies, well, 40 in this example, but she hopes for 200 eventually. I mean, I'm on board.
I reject that. I don't think she made them bullies. I think she turned their bullying into an addiction, an addictive behavior. And so...
Well, are you going against her word?
It's a matter of interpretation here. When she says she makes someone bullies, I think that's the difference between someone who bullies once and someone who's addicted to bullying. I think that's what she's getting at. And she talks about this a lot. She made them addicted to bullying. That's her power. She turned something which happens naturally as a process of society and makes it extreme and uncontrollable.
I'm totally on board with that. Like, I'm on board with the idea that yokai have different effects and powers.
So instead she just has the lamest bully out of any character. She makes people who would already be doing something feel bad when they're not doing it.
I think she accomplished quite well what she set out to do. She's basically representative of a toxin in society. She is much more of a Umineko class being than most of our yokai, which tend to be more about the legend. Like, she is a force of nature, personified.
So the twist is the girl who they're talking about being bullied is actually a yokai.
I really dug this because when I was reading it, I was actually feeling a little bit distanced from the story. I felt like the bullying was getting too stereotypical to, like...
Cool. Have you read both of those articles or just one of them?
Now, this is when I was reading it, Picto. When I was reading it, I felt like it was too hammy. It was like he was playing it up way too much to force the reader to, like, care about this. And I thought, you know... I thought it was unrealistic. And when I saw that Sumire was introduced as a character, I was really happy that there was a good explanation for why these bullies had been driven to that sort of addictive nature. Because I feel like the addiction in particular is something that feels quite unrealistic to me. I can't see many bullies, like, beating up a curtain just because their target isn't around because they have nothing better to do. I think that's weird. Maybe there's some precedence for that, but I don't think that's a very common thing in psychology.
Doesn't that sound like something that could happen with normal psychological addiction?
Not very frequently. Like, especially with 4 people, it seems very weird to me. It's something I really couldn't accept. And that's why when Sumire was introduced, it provided a convenient explanation for that.
Also, her powers have nothing to do with any kind of myth in the school or a legend. Because her story, she has a story. It's the one about the girl on the playground at night or something.
Oh, yeah. Shit, I forgot about that.
Yeah, if you play with the little girl, then she takes you away. You're never seen again.
So
there was a
the
story.
yokai being completely
There was a
disconnected
story, yes.
from the bullying problem is yet another indication that the story completely went off the goddamn rails when Sumire showed up.
Well, it could be that the girl is alone because of bullying, and that's kind of like a commentary on how
Question.
I mean, it
people
could
tend
be,
to bully
but
people who are, you know, alone. You know, like that article that Kiketsukimi linked. I definitely recommend checking that out, by the way, guys. Chapter 3 discussion. It contained 2 articles about bullying in Japan, which kind of opened my eyes. Like, shit can get pretty fucked up. Especially with regard to, like, how Japan society is all about conformity. If you don't fit in, if you don't read the mood, then you are an outcast and you will be ostracized. And I feel like the image of a girl standing alone in the schoolyard conjures a loner, and
Wasn't it at night, though?
that's specifics. Like, these legends don't have to be real, but I think it conjures to mind
No,
the idea of
the
someone who
legend
is...
specifies at night, though.
What's that? How is that relevant to what I'm
It's a spooky
saying?
ghost story thing.
Yeah, but that still conjures to mind the idea of someone who has been isolated and isn't part of the group.
To be honest, someone being in the schoolyard at night conjures to mind the image of someone who has problems at home in the evening, compared to anything else.
Well, that's an argument, but I stand by my argument that the point of it, a child being alone, is that they have been ostracized, and that is a result of bullying. I don't know, like, it's... I see your point where, like, there is a bit of a disconnect between the yokai story and her abilities, but there is an argument to be made that there is a connection there. That's all I'm saying.
But since we got to those articles, what this basically made me realize, so I was also pretty much, I had often a feeling that the bullying displayed in Higanbana is too extreme, but through those articles I realized the situation in Japan actually is that terrible, or can be that terrible.
I still don't buy the addiction thing, but at the very least the level of bullying is not unprecedented.
And
Maybe, like, the stripping her down was a bit far. Like, I think that's a bit crazy. But that was also after the Sumire thing was revealed.
yeah, basically what I realized there is that difference of values is in Japan, it's the important part is that you fit in and that you are pretty much like everyone else. Whereas in
Right.
our Western school systems, the individuality of everyone is way more important. Like, we have learning systems where it's important that children can do their own decisions, that they get some choices what they learn or what they work on. pretty much every presentation you can do is a opportunity to express your individuality. Because while you have a topic, there's also a part that's just simply you.
Right. And I think that's a very big point that Ryukishi is trying to draw attention to here, is this issue of having to be part of the whole is very conducive to bullying in Japan specifically, and probably other countries with similar cultures of like collective responsibility and all that. If you want recommended reading or viewing, go watch Gatchaman Crowds, guys. This show has plenty to say on this topic. Probably better than Higanbana in this regard.
You know the second thing that happens in this story?
The boss.
You mean
The bus.
the problem solving itself by just everyone being killed off at
It's
the end?
even worse than
It's
that,
so
actually,
lazy.
as me and Magus have went over.
See, like, I was originally defending this because I felt like, it's a problem that couldn't be resolved.
But no, that's not the thing you should be saying, though. You shouldn't be saying it's a problem that can't be resolved. You should be saying, here's a way we could, or here's, like, some ideas on how we could solve it. Like, what? You don't solve your problems with murder. Come on, Ryukishi.
So this is basically
It's-
Ryukishi surrendering. Like, he can't.
I mean, it
think of
kind
a
of was.
solution.
I feel like Picto's point that this chapter ending was
About
rushed,
Ryukishi.
I think that's 100% correct. Because he brings up points about how there's systemic problems in Japanese school culture that causes bullying to flourish. He talks about the nutrients of the heart and how there's that story about how like one student in the class is targeted by spirits, so they're bullied, and then that means that everybody else is safe. Like, he talks all about these different hierarchical ways that bullying is encouraged in Japanese school culture, and then doesn't like present any solutions. Which I thought was just really frustrating to me. I'm not saying that I have all the answers. I'm not saying that anyone here has all the answers, except maybe Vice. But I don't think that causing a bus to crash and kill 40 people was the way to solve the problem.
The most telling part of how rushed it was how Ozaki was handled on the bus.
Oh, poor Ozaki. He was my favorite character. I just couldn't help it.
Ozaki, literally, Ryukishi realizes, fuck, I've decided that I'm going to kill all of these people, but Ozaki isn't bullying anymore. I need to make him become evil nanoseconds before the bus crash.
I couldn't
So he
handle it.
does.
Like, because we see that Ozaki is a sort of semi-redeemable character. He stops bullying because he's scared, but he still does. And then, yeah, literally 30 seconds before his death, he becomes evil to justify the ending. I loved everything. I've been really enjoying hearing about it, but this was a real, like, sticking point for me. This is probably the only point in the novel I've genuinely felt frustrated. Like, I wanted Ryukishi to do something, anything else than killing 40 people. I don't know. I don't know what the alternative was, but something better than that.
The alternative was to acknowledge that there are issues, and, like, at the very least, don't have Higanbana show up and knock the... Like, if somehow it would have been demonstrated that Higanbana had nothing to do with their deaths, and it was just an accident, it would have still been rushed. Yeah, they could have went, oh, it's really sad that all those people died. It's a very bad thing those people died, but to look on the bright side, it did get me out my situation. But there's no thinking like that. It's just, oh, thank God, they are dead.
Yeah.
In fact, she's on the phone. When she hears they're all dead, she's like, yay, my class is dead. Like, fuck.
The worst part is that when we get before the reveal that Reiko is actually Sumeria and some yokai, that caused this Yukari's approach of, I don't stand up for that, I'll be there for you and I will not bully you, I will go against that, is actually a step in the right direction.
That was such a
Like,
good
it's not-
scene.
It was so good.
Like,
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I
That was
loved
the
that
peak.
scene so much. I was like, damn, this is such a good message. Like, you go, girl, you're fighting back
they
finally.
needed
And
they
then,
needed to have that really good song to make it, like, get really high and really good, so the plummet could be more distinct.
Yep, and
but I did really like the scene where Sumire revealed herself. it was so damn unsettling and like really
Okay,
hit me
can we talk
hard.
about
She's a Disney villain.
Who cares? It
literally-
was impactful.
She's a Disney villain. I can't handle it.
Okay, so about her reveal, because I have more to lay into about this chapter. Marie is an idiot.
This is all getting cut.
Like, Marie suddenly reduced her intelligence to like 1 for the duration of this chapter, and is completely incapable of, when she is standing around and the villain is still flapping their gums at her, she's completely incapable of going, let me think about this situation rationally for 2 seconds. So let's draw a flow map, okay? Of her killing Samir versus her not killing Samir. Because Samir's like, oh, if you kill me... In fact, no. Magus, you voice it. You're the closest thing we have to a voice actor here.
If you kill me now, you don't understand what will happen to poor Yukari. She will become bullied.
Jesus Christ.
But if you do not kill me, she'll still be bullied. Thank you.
Like, if Marie kills Yukari, she will either become the bully, which she clearly does. If she does not kill her, she will either become the bully, something she clearly does not want to do, or she will be bullied.
You'll be bullied.
If she doesn't.
Horribly.
If she kills Samir, Yukari will be bullied, but Samir won't be able to inflict the same fate upon like 100 other kids.
Yeah.
And if the source of the constant addiction is out of the way, then Marie can continue to help Yukari through the tough times.
Yeah, I mean, Higanbana is definitely ahead of everyone in this chapter. I think it was entirely Higanbana's intention that Sumire become involved and that she teach Marie a lesson. Because that was the whole point, is that Marie was kind of pissing Higanbana off by saying, oh, you shouldn't hunt. And this is Higanbana saying, well, this is the alternative. If I don't hunt, someone else will. And they'll create an army of bullies, and nobody wants that. But then she still can't let the slight go because she kills all of Sumire's, like, drones. So from a character development perspective, at least on Higanbana's point, I thought it was quite effective. So, you know, she want the silver lining there.
From the story pretending this is okay perspective.
Yeah. That's okay, though. I think it's okay to have some problems.
Basically, this is Higanbana's first kill that has nothing to do with her constant suicide thing, which is even
Don't
commented
even
on
tell
her
me.
profile.
This is so bad. I had such a solid theory.
And-
God damn.
Well, she didn't eat the souls of these. Wait, did she?
Did she, though? So here's the thing. This is the fun part. She says she did. She says she ate all the souls, but we're not actually shown her eating the souls. So there's still a question. There's still a question there. And a lot of the dialogue during the chapter indicates that she makes people self-harm themselves and then sent to the infirmary, and then she slowly whispers to them to commit suicide. So I still think that she's tied to suicide, but there is a question there as to when she killed the bus people, as to whether it was they died and then I ate them, or was they died and then I ate them, in quotation marks, like she killed them before Sumire could use them. I wouldn't have, like, if I was writing it, if I were Ryukishi, I just wouldn't have let it get to that point. I would have stopped it before. Because we saw that Yukari possesses the power to break people out of the bullying phase, like when they were bullying Ryuko-chan, wasn't it? She, like, spoke up and was like, no, you shouldn't do that. Like, I would have liked to have seen her go to some teachers or somebody with authority, maybe, or maybe a group of people who are concerned about bullying in the school, and then this would have required a lot more time, of course. As we've said, the ending seems rushed, and, you know, maybe there could have been another version of the story that had a bunch of people coming together and fixing the problem. It's okay, though. I think it's okay. Ryukishi isn't a perfect person. He's very close, but he's a human, like the rest of us. I think it's okay to have a chapter that has some flaws in it. I think that just because there are flaws in his work doesn't mean we should lose respect for him, and that just because people say there are flaws in the work doesn't mean that we have to deny that and say that it's perfect, because it's not. And I think at the end of the day, that's perfectly reasonable. That's all I had to say.
I feel like even though the presentation falls a bit flat in some areas in this particular chapter, the message he's trying to get across is still really fucking good, and even like the final conclusion with Yukari is solid. You know, cut it down, like, cut bullying down at the bud. You know, don't let it fester. That's a very important message. And, like, you know, Vice was posed this question of, you know, what do we think of bullying? How do we react to it? How do we attempt to solve it?
Yeah.
And, you know, this is a question I'm confronted with on a daily basis because I run 2 websites and, you know, that there's always going to be bullying happening. And, you know, I find it very interesting because people have different thresholds for what they consider bullying. To one person, a simple comment they consider harmless could be, you know, construed as very harmful to another person. And, like, I think that's a big thing about bullying is that people don't, it's like people don't really realize when they're bullying, or nobody wants to be labeled a bully, right? We all want to, because that's a very negative word. Nobody wants to be seen as a bully. So when they do bully someone else, they try to justify it through different means of like, oh, it's not actually bullying. And, you know, I see this stuff all the time. And as a moderator for 2 communities, I often have to step in and, you know, lay some clear groundwork of what is acceptable and what is not. And, you know, Ryukishi does bring this to mind as well. There's like active bullying and passive bullying, right? Where sometimes just the simple act of remaining silent and not drawing attention to when something is problematic is just as bad as not doing anything. Just as bad as actively contributing to it.
That isn't what Utopia says, though. It says that it's partially as bad as, it isn't just as bad as, it's like you're like a half bully is what I think is the quote.
Well, okay, half a bully then. It's still important though, because like this is something I'm really been trying to cultivate on Rokendino, is that we have many cases where people are acting very disrespectful or rude or harmful to one another, and many others will just kind of turn a blind eye to it. And I kind of want to, this is getting very meta, I'm trying to encourage this environment where people are willing to speak up when they see something that they don't think is quite right. And I feel like that's what Ryukishi hopes for as well. You know, when we see problems, we talk about them, we draw attention to them, and we don't let them fester and continue to grow out of control. And I think that's a really solid message that could be applied to almost any context. You know, bullying is something which is very much a word which is associated with like grade school, high school, middle school. You know, it's very much a school ground sort of term. And I think adults maybe don't pay as much significance to it as they would, say, harassment, which is another word which means exactly the same thing, but is just given a more adult connotation. Basically, I know, like, I feel like bullying is very much a concept in human psychology which we can't ignore. I think it's very interesting for Ryukishi to talk about it in the terms of nutrients for the soul. There's definitely, like, an argument to be made that people gain a lot of satisfaction out of bullying those below them. But that ain't cool, man. We gotta work together to stop that shit.
Definitely.
You know, make a statement, say what we're willing to accept. And you know, this comes in all forms. It's just like people, you know, isolating people that don't agree. And you know, the whole concept of a utopia is so interesting to me, because in many ways what I'm trying to do for Kenjimo is create a environment where everyone feels comfortable, and that comes with excluding people at times, and you know, that can be construed as bullying, which is very interesting. And so that kind of comes back to the question in Japanese psychology and sociology of whether it's okay to fight against the majority, even if, like, the majority's wrong.
I mean, when I posed those questions, I was at that point more thinking about the school environment and was basically asking what one would do from each perspective. So, what would you do if you're a bullied child? What would you do as a teacher? And what would you do as a parent?
Yeah. We can talk about that if you want, Vi.
Okay, I can go ahead myself. So, as for myself, my mom actually is a teacher at a kindergarten, so I did ask her a little bit about that topic. And as if you're a bullied child itself, one thing that can be a important thing is that you actually tell the bullies that you don't like what they are doing, as as we mentioned, sometimes the bullies don't actually realize they are bullying. So sometimes
Yeah, that is the
just
thing.
saying that the thing
I mean,
that's
it doesn't
happened is
always
bad.
work, but it's...
Of course, it doesn't always work.
Yeah, but it's quite effective in certain circumstances.
Yeah. And both for the parent and teacher situation, the most important thing is that you tell the child that you are there for them and that you look at the situation. The advice that we saw in this chapter of ignoring it can actually be valid advice as well. Of course, it always depends. It depends on the situation. We are trying to get a general answer to something that is just so different depending on the situation. So,
And just going back to my tangent, I feel the question of whether, the importance of harmony versus excluding an individual is very dependent on the kind of group we're dealing with. If we're dealing with a classroom, then that should be an environment which is conducive to learning, and so any actions which are disruptive to a learning environment should be, taken action against. I feel like if there's some kids which are just being rowdy and distracting the class, then that's something which should be addressed. If there is a student which is gay, that shouldn't be a problem because that has no bearing on the educational environment. And I think it's also how we deal with those students that stick out is another problem. If we're harassing them through physical violence, or we're psychologically tormenting them, that is not a good way to get them to change their behavior either. Sometimes the answer might just be, in the extreme case, there's expulsion. You expel the bullies from the school because you feel like they're not conducive to the school environment. In the case of something like Kazumatsuro or Kenjima, I find that even if someone is being disruptive to the community, I always try to treat them in a way respectful, because they deserve respect. People deserve respect even if they are being disruptive. And so the last thing I want to do is create an environment where a single person, betrays our values for the group, and so I tell everyone to laugh at them. That's the worst possible thing that anyone could do as a moderator. And there have been times in my experience, I can speak especially for Kazumatsuri, where there is someone who did something really shitty to the site and is kind of a meme now. It reached the point where people kind of joke about it and continue to make fun of them. And, the more I've thought about that in recent years, the more I've tried to stop that, because that's, even though they're not here, even though they'll never hear it, that's still very much an act of bullying, which I believe is, not okay. And so,
I mean, we could get into that if you really wanted to, but I feel dependent on what that person did, which you obviously don't want to talk about, but I could use a similar example. I don't think it would necessarily... you've got to it's all about social discouragement. You have to provide some sort of disincentive for people doing awful things like that.
right.
And quite often, the knowledge that they will be continuously shamed by the community that lives on is often quite a lot to stop people doing things like that.
But that's also that's, I guess it's the difference between bullying and punishment, right?
Yeah, there's a big question about tolerance in a way. If there are people who are choosing, you always want to say we're creating an inclusive community, something that values opinion and freedom of speech and all those sorts of things. But if someone is doing things that are not conducive to that environment of tolerance, then you need, whatever it was that we're dealing with, you need to take those people out. Tolerance of intolerance or tolerance of negative behavior is only going to breed more bad behavior. It seems to be it's a big question for a lot of people, and this goes a bit beyond school bullying and even little groups. This goes to global politics, but being tolerant of people who are doing things that are not good, subjective, whatever good is, but they're not conducive to the values of your community, you should eject them. That's how it is. It's my opinion anyway.
But then there's respectful and disrespectful ways of doing that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't
People,
yell at them,
it's
scream
like
at
if
them.
we want to take it to the global level, you don't want to violate someone's, human rights just because
Yes.
you don't agree with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Man,
You
this
treat
is.
them with respect.
I had a feeling it would go in this direction. But, yeah,
probably
it
curve
kind
back.
of did. No, it's good. I want to talk about it.
Cool.
I think it's important. But, I think you've pretty much put the nail on the head there. This is something which needs to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, but it really, puts into perspective how bullying is not just a school thing. It's just a word we use to describe this sort of behavior in a school environment.
Yeah, I mean, take this discussion to your IRL friends, talk to people, get discussion going, and do your research, most importantly, which is something that I really need to do, because I have a lot of feelings, but not a lot of proper practical examples on how to apply global policy, as it were. Yeah, I think it's a really good
bullying,
message.
Bullying is just something that occurs everywhere in our lives, and I think it's so important that we remain attentive of how our actions can be affecting others, especially when it's multiple people ganging up on one person. You need to be aware that the power of the majority is dangerous and it can very easily be misused.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there are some important things worth standing up for, which will inevitably pit the many against the few. But even when that happens, we need to be aware that we are doing so in a fair way and respecting that the minority as much as possible. Yeah, that's
Cool.
basically some thoughts there.
No, that was really good. That was really well put. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so just wanted to do shout outs to this fan art I had commissioned of Reiko and Yukari. It's actually kind of interesting that ship ended up coming about, because at the time I had no idea what this story would be about. And then I saw that and then oh god, brings to mind mixed feelings, because I really liked that duo when I was reading it. And then I find out that that's all fake, and I'm no, you betrayed me, Reiko!
Oh dear, she was the mole. Mm-hmm.
That was an impactful moment.
Reminds me of the Black Tea Gentleman and Midori. Oh, it's such a cute little duo. Oh, no.
That's all ruined.
Never mind.
It was 310 on the forum. I don't know if they want me to credit their real name or anything, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing that fan art. It looks really good.
It's amazing.
Just, the content makes me feel things. But yeah, I'm just wrapping this up. How does everyone feel about Higanbana so far, having finished the first night?
I really enjoyed it. There were some flaws. That's okay, as I said earlier. I am enjoying the unique horror thing that Ryukishi's going for. I like that he's completely committing to that. This idea of ghost stories, I like that he's kind of half deconstructing them. I like the take on bullying and that he's fully committing to that idea. I really want to know more about Higanbana. I want to know where she comes from. I want to know where she's going. I want to know what her character arc is and whether or not she can find redemption. That's my thoughts. I'm out!
Very good. And I guess, I've really gotten into Higanbana so far. There was maybe 2 chapters I was questioning, but for the most part, I've really enjoyed these stories. I'd say it's surpassing my expectations. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, both phenomenal. Hammond's Castanets was another standout one. And I do really like Utopia despite the flaws. I feel like it's got a really good message that, we're obviously able to extrapolate and expand on here. But, presentation-wise, it has some issues, but the message is still really good, and I appreciate Ryukishi for getting it out there. Being determined to get this story out there in the first place, because it's clear that he was driven for Higanbana to see the light of day, or the School Yokai Travelogue as it was originally known. I'm very excited to start talking about the second night. I've already read a little bit ahead, and what I've seen so far is really good, so I'm very excited to get into that. And we'll be talking about that next weekend. I don't know who's going to be on the podcast for that one. Probably some of you guys. We'll see how we go. But yeah, I'm quite excited. I've still got 2 more chapters to talk about. Sorry, I've got 2 more chapters to read. So we'll be doing chapters 1 to 4 of the second night for the next podcast. So if you're listening in, now's your time to catch up and join the discussion on the forum so we can all get some discussion happening before we record the podcast. Very much looking forward to it. So once again, everybody, thank you for joining me for this podcast, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Catch ya!
Goodbye.
Bye.